So we're going to be talking about soil some more. We started talking about soil the other day. Who remembers when we were talking about soil, what did we say soil was? Jadine?
We remember that the soil has nutrients in it, and it helps plants grow in certain places.
Okay, so soil has nutrients in it and it can help plants grow in certain places. Okay,
And it can absorb water really easily.
it can absorb water. Noah, do you remember something extra? Or did Jadine say everything you remember too?
Um, is soft?
It can be soft, yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else remember something different? Alexa?
It's it's this type of dirt that can make plants grow.
Okay, so like a kind of dirt plants can grow. Bella? Mushy, okay, can be. Remember, when we talk about soil, soil is a mixture. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of different things mixed together. So soil is a mixture of sand, silt, clay, rock, and humus. Okay, this last part, very important. It's humus, not hummus. Hummus is the stuff you can buy at Walmart or Albertsons or Target and you can eat it. Humus is a component of soil. Okay, so like we see here, when we talk about soil, soil is not just one thing. It's often got a lot of these different kinds of soil mixed up together in it. Retain means to hold inside, like soil does with water. So when it rains, or if you go and let's say you have a garden and you're out there with the watering can and you're pouring water all over the dirt, the water sucks up into the dirt and it stays in there. Because if the water doesn't stay in the soil, then the plants aren't going to be able to grow very well. So humus. This is a picture of what humus looks like. Humus is a component, a part of soil. It's made from decayed organic material, which could be plants or it could be animals. So what happens is when you have plants or animals and when they die, it breaks down. Like sometimes if you ever see, like usually around this time of year, if you have trees like in your front yard or if you have trees on your street, a lot of different kinds of trees, the leaves will start to fall off and they'll fall onto the floor. And at first they're really, really crunchy. But then after a little bit, they kind of get like soft and almost feel like soggy. If you let them go and you leave them alone for long enough, they break down, they decay, and they start to turn into humus. One way that you can tell that soil or dirt has a lot of humus in it is because it'll have this really dark color. Whenever you have that humus, that decayed matter, it has a very dark color to it. Okay? The good thing about humus is that it has a lot of nutrients for plants. And humus retains lots of water. So humus has a pretty soft feel to it. I think like the way Bella described it earlier is probably the best. It feels like mushy. You kind of have an idea of how it feels if you've ever helped mom or dad, like if they have a garden, or if you've ever planted like flowers or vegetables or anything like that. You can go to places like Lowe's, like Home Depot, like Walmart. I think Target sells it too, and they have bags of soil for gardens, like potting soil. If you've ever stuck your hand into it and felt it, it does feel kind of like mushy and soft, and it has a very, very dark color to it. That has a lot of humus in it. The next type of soil or component of soil is called gravel. Gravel is when you have small pieces of rocks and pebbles. Depending on the gravel, like if you look at this picture here, it can kind of feels smooth, but oh yeah, at Dollar General, yeah, they'll sell it there too, Bella. Gravel can feel smooth, or it can feel pretty rough. It depends on the rocks and the pebbles that are in the gravel. Sometimes, like in this picture, if you look at these pebbles or these rocks, they're all really smooth. So if you picked up the gravel in your hands and you kind of moved it around, it would feel really lumpy, but pretty smooth. But some gravel, if you pick it up, they have like sharp edges, and if you tried to roll it around in your hands, it would feel like really rough and scratchy. Yeah, some people use gravel in their backyard or their front yard. They'll put it in different places, and sometimes they'll pick rocks that have like different colors, so it looks really pretty. Now gravel does not do a good job of retaining water. Like when it rains, the water doesn't soak into the rocks, and the water doesn't stay around for very long. It evaporates, it leaves very quickly. What's up, Bradley?
I know rocks, places you can find rocks that can be smooth, like at the sea.
Yeah.
Like rocks that are being covered up by the waves in the sea.
Mm-hmm. You can definitely find some smooth rocks there. A lot of times, like in this picture, if you have a place where there's lots of gravel, when the gravel is kind of all together with other rocks, and let's say you leave it alone for a while, like a longer while, and days that are windy or people walking around on it, the gravel will actually rub against each other and it'll feel smoother. So it's not always going to be very, very sharp. Again, it kind of depends on the rocks. So if the rocks are smooth, it'll have just like a lumpy, smooth feel to it. If the rocks are a little bit sharper, then it'll have more like a scratchy, like rough texture to it. Sand is another component of soil. Okay, sand is what happens when you take gravel and you have all the little bits of rocks and dirt, well, basically rocks and pebbles. When you have them like smashing into each other, like smacking into each other because people are walking on it, or because it's a really windy day, or like Bradley mentioned, if it's at the beach and the waves are kind of like throwing the rocks into the other rocks. If you let that happen for a really long time, usually in fish tanks we put gravel, yeah. But if you take the gravel and you smack the rocks into each other over and over again for a long, long time, they'll break and they'll turn into even smaller pieces. And those small little pieces are sand. Now, usually when we pick up sand, it kind of all looks one color. Like it might look a really light brown color. It might look like a lighter color, or it might look maybe like a gray color. But if you pick up a handful of sand and you look at it really close, it'll look like this picture. You'll see that there's a bunch of little tiny pieces in the sand, and the color just depends on which one there are more of. If there are more pieces that are like a light brown color, the sand is going to look light brown. If there's a lot of pieces that are like, let's say a white color, like at white sands, it'll look white. Jaylene?
May I go to the bathroom?
Yeah, like I said before, you don't have to ask, just let me know. What's up, Alexa?
Sorry for the background noise, but did we go on that?
Yeah, you want to open it up.
Okay, thank you.
So, like gravel, sand does not do a very good job of retaining water. If you've ever been like at the beach, you know that even though the sand kind of absorbs water, like if the waves are smacking into the beach, it doesn't stay wet for super long. Like, especially for those of you who have been to the beach, you know that when you walk around at first, the sand is really wet and it kind of sticks to you, like your feet, your legs, your arms, everything. But if you stay outside of the water for 10-15 minutes, then the sand isn't wet anymore. It kind of dries off and you're able to just wipe it off of you. If you have, I don't know, a sandbox, or you're played at a sandbox, you kind of know the same thing. If you had like a juice box and you spilled the juice box, it soaks into the sand pretty quickly, but it doesn't stay wet for forever. It dries up pretty quick. Now, sand has a really rough and gritty texture. When you pick it up and you rub it between your hands, you can kind of feel it like scratching or like rubbing your hands pretty rough. Definitely not something that you want to like fall onto, because it does, scratch you up, or it can scratch you up. Yeah, if you have sand in your backyard, then you know what I'm talking about, right, Noah? Like if you pick it up and kind of rub it in your hands, it feels really rough and scratchy. Clay. So this is what clay looks like, not the Play-Doh kind, but the clay in soil. So clay is a component of soil, a part of soil. Okay? Clay feels, if it's dry, will feel very, very soft and powdery. Like if any of you have, really quickly, raise your hand if you've ever helped mom or dad or brother or sister bake something. You've ever helped them bake cookies or a cake or cupcakes or anything like that. Okay? For those of us who have helped them bake something, you know how the way flour feels? Very, very soft, very, very light. That's the way that clay will feel if it's dry. If you can get dry clay, it feels just like flour. Very, very soft, very, very light, powdery. It actually feels pretty nice to pick up and hold in your hands. The only problem is, just like flour, you get dirty really quickly with clay. Like those, exactly, Noah. Those of you who've ever helped mom or dad or brother or sister bake something, you know that afterwards, if you look down at your shirt, you've a lot of times got big white splotches all over you. Or sometimes, if you're like me, you kind of brush your hands on your shirt without thinking, and then you look down and you have like big white handprints on your tummy. So clay, when it's dry, feels like powder, feels like flour. But when it's wet, like it is in this picture, it starts to feel really sticky, and it feels kind of like I guess, like clay, almost like Play-Doh. It feels very like thick, but it feels almost like sticky. Now, if clay gets wet and then you let the clay dry out, then it gets hard. Clay can hold a lot of water. Not exactly like slime, but I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. It's almost like, the best way to put it is probably thinking of Play-Doh. Like if you've ever bought Play-Doh or modeling clay, clay feels like that. It feels a little more sticky than Play-Doh. Play-Doh comes off of your hands pretty easily. Clay, like the kind we're looking at here, you gotta like really wash your hands to get it to come off. But it feels a lot more sticky than Play-Doh, but it's kind of the same thing. It feels kind of heavy. You can use it to make things, but what you have to do is you have to wet the clay first, so it looks like this in the picture, and then you have to let it dry, and you got to let it dry all the way. If you've ever had Play-Doh or modeling clay, you know what happens, especially like with Play-Doh. If you don't close the top to your Play-Doh correctly and you leave it open a little bit, you come back the next day, you try to take out your Play-Doh to play with it again, you know that it dries up, it gets really hard, and then after it's dry, you can't really do anything with it. Same thing with clay. If you wanted to make it into like a cup or a bowl or something, you make sure it's wet, put it into the shape you want, and then you gotta leave it alone to dry. And once it's dry, it gets really hard, and you have a cup or a bowl, whatever it is that you're trying to make. What's up, Bailey?
There's also a thing that kind of describes us too. It's like called a putty.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like slime, but it's like this soft, and it's not sticky. It's easy to get off your hands.
Yeah.
And it's also like Play-Doh and clay. If you leave it out, it dries up.
Mm-hmm. It depends on the kind of putty, but you're right. Some putty feels like clay. What's up, Bradley?
I know that clay is sometimes used for modeling stuff
Yep.
because
Absolutely.
I've made clay cups in my old school, and apparently our art teacher said if you don't make your clay cups right, they might explode in the oven.
They can, yeah. Yeah, especially with things like that, you got to be careful that you're making them correctly because teacher was absolutely right. It could make a big
Mine,
mess.
yeah, mine didn't explode, but some kids' clays exploded.
Yeah, you got to be careful with it.
Some kids' clay cups exploded.
Chase. Oh, okay. Thought you had a question. Yeah, you might have clay in the soil in your backyard or even your front yard. Usually with clay, it's not at the top. You got to dig down a little bit to find it, but you can find it. But clay retains lots of water. So like here, this is like after it rained. You can see that it does look pretty smooth. But if you were to take that, you could actually scoop that up and you could use it and mold it into like a cup or a bowl. Then you got to let it dry all the way. But then afterwards, you'd have something you could use. The next thing is silt. Silt, you can actually see this is a picture of like a stream or a pond here. Silt is this kind of powdery looking stuff that's hanging out on the top. Silt is another component, another thing that soil can be made out of. Silt is somewhere in size between clay and sand. So clay, even if you pick it up and you hold it up to your face to look at it really carefully, it's really hard to see all the little tiny itty bitty pieces of clay. Sand, like I said, if you picked it up and you held it up really close to your face, you could see all the little bitty pieces of like rock and things like that that make up sand. Silt is kind of in between. The pieces are a little bit bigger than clay, but they're smaller than sand. It feels pretty much like clay when it's dry. It feels very soft, very powdery. And like clay, it retains lots and lots of water. Now this bottom part, this is what you're going to have to do. Okay? It's got some questions for us. We are going to read the questions and then use the circle to show which answer we pick. Okay? The first question is, if I wanted a good soil to grow plants in, I should make sure that my soil has lots of blank. If you wanted a good soil to grow plants with, would you want your soil to have lots of gravel, lots of sand, or lots of... You're going to take the circle and you're going to move it over whichever one you think is the correct answer. Yes, Kylie.
What's the one after sand?
After sand is humus. So if we look up, it's this one here.
What is that?
Well, we read about it. You can read it again. It says humus, a component of soil made from decayed organic material, which is plants and animals. Has a dark color and contains lots of nutrients for plants. Retains lots of water. What's up, Kaylee?
In humans, and the answer one is what's called put two M's.
Oh, did it? Oh, it did. That's all right. Take your circle, put it over whichever one you think is the correct answer. What's up, Alexa?
On slide number 10, did we do it by ourselves?
It's gonna be the same thing that we did on slide number 9. I'll read the question and then you just put your answer. But yeah,
Okay,
you
sorry
put it
for
on
the
there.
background noise.
It's okay.
What the heck was that?
Okay. Slide number 10 says, if I wanted a soil that would feel very soft when it was dry, the soil should have lots of blank. Gravel, clay, or humus? Same thing as slide number 9. Take the circle and put it over whichever picture you think is the correct answer. If I wanted a soil that would feel very soft when it was dry, the soil should have lots of gravel, clay, or humus. Slide number 11. If I wanted a soil that will not hold a lot of water, I would make sure that my soil has lots of silt, sand, or humus. What's up, Alexa?
What's silt?
Silt is up here on slide number 8. Silt says a component of soil made of small grains between the size of sand and clay. Feels very powdery like when dry, like clay, retains lots of water.
Okay, thank you.
Remember, you can always look back at the earlier slides to see information about these different ones. Forgot it. Slide number 12. If I wanted a soil that looked very dark, I should make sure my soil has lots of humus, gravel, or sand. If I wanted a soil that looked very dark, I should make sure my soil has lots of humus, gravel, or sand. What's up, Bradley?
I have the answer.
Well, you have your hand up, that's why. Did you click it by accident?
No.
Shows you that you have your hand raised.
Hmm?
But you don't have any questions?
No.
Okay. And slide 13. If I wanted a soil with a rough and gritty texture, I should make sure my soil has lots of gravel, sand, or humus. If I wanted a soil with a rough and gritty texture, I should make sure that my soil has lots of gravel, sand, or humus. So for slide number 9,
What
10.
does gritty mean?
Gritty means like lots of little pieces. So it's not going to have like a lot of big chunks, but a lot of really small chunks. That's what gritty means.
I think you just told us there.
Well, the answers are all in the information before.
I know, but you said small, like sand.
I didn't say like sand. I said it was small pieces.
Gritty. Oh, okay.
What's up, Alexa?
Do we turn it in when we're done?
Yep, when you have an answer circled for 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, you turn in your work.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.